Chapter 1 Episode 9, In a Town Inn. The bodyguard duty over Illyria that Ryoma had taken on continued until Sabas called her back to the inn. Now, they were back at the inn's lobby and confirming their booking. Ow, are you okay, my lady? Yes, my feet are just a little tired. Also, from the carriage, were you all right with it, Ryoma? It wasn't a problem. The fatigue of the journey and a little pain down his backside from the rocking carriage was nothing to Ryoma. When Illyria realized those were his true feelings, her shoulders slumped a little from comparing herself with the same-aged Ryoma. One of the maids noticed that and immediately called out to her. That's normal for a first journey, my lady. Iran. You will grow used to it as you ride in carriages more. Master Ryoma seemed fine with it. But was this your first experience riding a carriage? This was the first. Oh, really? You seemed unaffected, so I assumed you had ridden one before. I haven't, but I've run alongside them, and pulled them before. He had ran parallel to man-powered rickshaws as part of his daily training during his school days, and outran them several times. Eventually he ended up scouted by the rickshaw owner, and out of nostalgia for his rickshaw pulling job, those were the words that fell out of his mouth. However, Illyria and Iran mistook the words as Ryoma being forced to pull the carriages in place of horses. The conversation came to a halt at the sudden misunderstanding, the air growing heavy. What? Did I say something weird? Speaking too much about his past had a high chance of creating holes in his story. That was why Ryoma was meant to make others think he had a past that was hard to intrusively question. But his utterance this time had been accidental, so Ryoma himself wasn't aware that his words had caused the sudden pained look on Iran and Illyria's face. He tried to bring up a new topic in his confusion. Have you never gone out before, my lady? You didn't seem familiar with the carriage, so I'm curious. Oh, no, I have gone out before, but until now, whenever we had business in other towns I would ride the familiars of my mother or grandfather. I would ride carriages in the towns, but only for short durations. I see. But there was no way a man who had been terrible at socializing for over 40 years would suddenly possess the conversational ability to break out of the situation so easily, and the conversation trailed off into silence. The one who eventually broke the silence was Reinhardt, who returned from discussing tomorrow's plans with the escorts. Good work today, everyone. Elia, we won't be camping tonight, so get some proper rest. FFES, father. As for Ryoma, I wasn't able to get a room like ours for you. I'm sorry, but you'll be staying in one of the servant rooms for the inn guests. That will be enough. It's a big room, but Sabas is going through the procedures to put you in the same room as Zeph and the others. I'm sure you'll feel more at ease with familiar faces around. I am very grateful. After Ryoma gave his thanks, he went with Sabas while Illyria went with her parents to their respective rooms. In the ducal house's room, the four people of the house of Jamil were relaxing in the room, when Reinhardt suddenly asked Illyria a question. Elia, what were you talking to Ryoma about in the lobby earlier? The air was kind of tense. Illyria flinched at those words. The truth is, I touched upon Ryoma's past a little really, FFES. Ryoma seemed fine in the carriage, so I thought he was used to riding them, but today was his first time riding in a carriage. He said he hadn't ridden them before, but he used to run alongside or pull them himself. I see, but he didn't seem too bothered about it himself. He was acting normally after that too. So you don't need to worry too much about it either, Elia. Just be at ease, dear. You dragged him everywhere before we came to the inn, no? Keep being that way around him. Illyria blushed when that was pointed out. That was looking back on it now, I'm embarrassed I was too excited. I agree, it was a little improper. Eep ho ho, being energetic is a good thing. Elia is still a child, so it's a point of charm. However, you mustn't grow careless. Acting like that is just asking for thugs to target you, you realize? You must take care of yourself. Now, go take a bath and sleep for today, we'll be on the move tomorrow too. And camping again, got it. I understand. Have a good night, mother, father, grandfather. Illyria said, leaving the room to take a bath. Once she was out of sight, the adults changed the topic. Phew, so, what do you think of Ryoma? I told Elia not to worry about it, but honestly there's lots to worry about. But he seems like a good child. Anyway, if he was planning something up his sleeve, I believe he would have acted more like a normal child to avoid suspicion. I have no objections to that. However, just what kind of life has he gone through to turn out like that? He said he took care of bandits with poison slimes, but that wasn't all of his abilities. He has a considerable amount of strength himself, casually protecting Elia while being dragged around in circles. While the only ones who attempted anything were amateurs who didn't notice us, it was a wonderful show of skills. It made our job much easier. That's right. Rainbok looked at his right hand, where a small snake was peeking out of his sleeve. The snake slithered along his palm and poked its head out between his index and middle fingers, which Rainbok petted with his thumb comfortingly. While it would seem cute to some people, it was a B-rank monster called the Assassin Snake. Its combat ability wasn't that high, but its compact size and swift movement, combined with its high wariness, made it difficult to find and defeat. Rainbok used this wariness to keep an eye on the thugs that approached his granddaughter. Even if Ryoma hadn't done anything, Illyria wouldn't have been exposed to any real danger. If he's that skilled at that age, then he must be. There's no need to be concerned over that right now. As long as one's alive, there's nothing wrong with being strong. We just have to watch over him. That's true. However, his reaction to the town hasn't been favorable, as expected. I won't say he has to go as far as Elia, but a child should normally be a little more excited. He didn't even blink at the size of the town or the number of people. It was like he was looking at a pebble on the road. Rienbaka's opinion wasn't wrong in a sense. However, his interpretation was greatly different to Ryoma's. While Ryoma had been looking at the crowds like he was looking at pebbles, that was because he had lived in a place as populated as Tokyo, spending his days within such crowds. Since he had seen far bigger crowds on a daily basis, he was wholly unsurprised by the crowds of this town, and was indifferent to the sights on offer. That was why he had looked at everything flatly, but for these three who were unaware of his situation, it looked as though his eyes were devoid of life. It doesn't feel right to see youth with their whole future ahead of them with that sort of look in their eyes on that day. More misunderstandings grew about Ryoma while he wasn't present. Meanwhile, in the room allocated to the servants, Sabas brought Ryoma to the room where he would be staying the night. Excuse me. Pardon the intrusion. They entered the room with their greetings to see Jill, Zaf, Camel, and Hughes inside already. It was a wide but simple room, with 6 beds and small tables lined next to each other. FFO, you're here. Welcome. It's only for one night, but let's get along. The bed in the corner is free. Thank you, I will be in your care. After exchanging greetings, the 5 other occupants in the room started chatting by asking Ryoma questions. Come to think of it, what do you normally do? Hull. We live in town, so we can go out eating and drinking at night, but you were in the forest. Normally, I research slimes and practice magic. Also, I work out. Is that all? FFES. Doesn't it get boring? Magic and slime research is fun. If you find research fun, you might have the disposition to be a researcher. That would definitely be impossible for me. Come to think of it, Master Ryoma occasionally uses some advanced vocabulary and polite language. Did you study anywhere before? I learned from my grandmother. She said having knowledge and manners was important to get by. Master Ryoma's grandmother sounds like a wonderful person. She was a person who could do everything, other than fighting with a weapon. Oh? Then what kind of person was your grandfather? Opposite of my grandmother, he could only make weapons and fight. But he was very good at handling weapons. The weapons he made were also top class. I was no match against his fighting nor his blacksmithing. You're a blacksmith too? L helped so I know the basics. But L didn't learn properly and haven't touched on it in over 3 years. I can only smith dull rejects. You certainly wouldn't be able to get any proper tools or materials in that forest. Now that you're out of the forest, you can just buy the things you need. More importantly, though, is there anything you want to do? If it's before dinner, you could even go for a walk. That was when Ryoma said, then, can I ask where is the church? Church? Sorry, but the church is closed at this hour. The church in this town shuts its gates before it gets dark, so it closes early. By the way, there are 2 churches in this town. Which one do you worship, creationism or divinity? Creationism. In that case, the church is unfortunately closed for today. If it were the Church of Divinity, then they would open the gates for a considerable donation really. While the scale of divinity is large, there are many corrupt priests who would do anything, depending on the donation. Even among the worshippers, there are many that believe in the gods but don't trust the priests. They say that those with their eyes on money head towards divinity, which leaves creationism with the devout priests instead. They worship the same gods, and there isn't much difference in the doctrines. Most people decide on their church based on the size or the personalities of the believers. I didn't know that. Thank you very much. It was nothing. But you must be pretty devout yourself, naming the church as the first place you want to go. Really? I am also a follower of creationism, but I only visit the church once a month, if at all. I barely worship while traveling. Did you go to church often before you lived in the forest? Ever since birth I have never gone. I just prayed to the stone statue at home. I also had a stone statue made from earth magic in my forest home. Then how about we buy some stone materials for you to make a statue? This is a high-class inn, so they should have the materials for carving statues of the gods. Sabas said, so Ryoma bought 3 large blocks from the inn. However, the stone materials sold there were of rather high quality, so the 3 blocks cost 1 small gold coin, a surprisingly high cost. Despite that, Ryoma bought it and returned to the room to use his earth magic. This time, the elaborate details on the completed statues had Camel making a fuss, while Sabas praised his work as good enough to make a living on. The details on the stone statues were simply due to the fact that Ryoma had actually met the gods in person, so he had a firm image of them in his mind. Thanks to his magic control skill, he had been able to control his earth magic precisely. And finally, thanks to his hobby of making figurines in his previous life, he was used to creating items like this. Starting with hues, the detailed reasons didn't matter. He enjoyed the peaceful time, smiling at having the statue before him being praised. He completed the 3 statues in that soft atmosphere, and by the time he finished praying it was time for dinner. Ryoma enjoyed another peaceful and fun time having his meal, then went to bed early in preparation for the new day.